structural organization in animals. Unicellular organisms, all the function is carried out by just the one single cell. But as you become multicellular, or digestion is taken care of by different organ, circulatory system is taking care of different organ. So here we are going to study about the tissue system in animal. So how the tissue system functions, and then we'll move on to organ, and then we'll move on to organ systems and how they all work together. That's what we're going to look. So tissues. So what is tissues? A group of similar cells along with the intercellular substances perform a specific function. Such an organization is called tissue. Tissue was introduced by Bichet, and he is known as the father of animal histology. I think he should have had a microscope and he was seeing everything under microscope. Now we are seeing everything in the fold. These tissues are organized to form an organ like stomach, lungs, heart and kidneys. The intercellular materials or the fluid form of environment of the cells. Cells, tissue, organ and organ system split up the work in a way that exhibits division of labor and contribute to the survival of the body as a whole. Next slide. Here we got epithelial, connective, muscular, neural tissues, right? So what is epithelial tissues? Epithelial tissues are epithelium covers both external and internal surface of animal bodies. It has a free surface which faces either a body cavity or outside environment, and thus provides a covering or a living for some part of the lining for some part of the body. Epithelial, connective, muscular and neural. Epithelial, connective, muscular and neural. Next slide. The cells are compactly arranged. Intercellular spaces are narrow, 20 to 30 nanometers wide. Adjacent cells are held together by intercellular junctions. The tissues lies on a thin non-cellular basement membranes. Blood vessels are absent. Materials are exchanged by diffusion between epithelial cells and the blood vessels of connective tissue. Nerve ending may penetrate the epithelial tissue. Moving on to next slide. Here, intercellular junction may include tight junctions, gap junction, desmosomes. Intercellular bridges are interdigitations. Tight junctions. The plasma membrane in the apical region of the adjacent epithelial cells become tightly packed together. These junction materials between the cells are called occluding junctions. Next is adhering junctions. These include desmosomes and hemidesmosomes. It's common process so as to keep the neighboring cells together. Next, desmosomes. These are thick and strong junctions. They serve anchoring functions. Gap junctions, they help in chemical exchange between adjacent cells and hence are called communicating junctions. What is it called? Communicating junctions. Next slide. Simple epithelia. So what is simple epithelia? Simple epithelium is made up of single layer of compactly arranged cells which rest over a non-cellular basement membrane. Simple squamous epithelium. The squamous is formed of a single layer of closely fitted flattened polygonal cells which forms bridges on the cell surface. The cells of squamous epithelium appears as tiles over a floor. Tiles over a floor. They are known as pavement epithelium. It occurs in the alveoli of the lung, pericardial cavity, abdominal cavity, Bowman's capsule, etc. Now look at what are the functions of this epithelium. Protection, excretion, gaseous exchange and secretion of coelomic fluids. Next is simple cuboidal epithelium. It is composed of a single layer of cube-like cells. The epithelium overlies on the basement membrane. The microvilli increases the surface area of free ends of the cells by many times. They commonly found in duct of the glands, tubular part of nephrons in kidneys, ovaries, seminiferous tubules of testes, etc. Now look at what is the functions of it. The main function is protection, secretion, absorption, excretion and gamete formation. Next is simple columnar epithelium. What is called simple columnar epithelium? It's composed of single layers of tall slender cells. A single oval or elongated nucleus is situated near the base of the cell. Some of its cells produce mucus, goblet cells. The mucus secreting goblet cells are found in the lining layer of stomach, intestines, respiratory tract, etc. So what are their functions now? The simple columnar epithelium helps in secretions, absorption and protection to the component of most glandular epithelia. Simple ciliated epithelium. Epithelium, if the columnar or cuboidal cells bears a cilia on their free surface. Cilia is just a tiny hair. They are called as ciliated epithelium. You will find it in the nostril. This epithelium is of two types, ciliated columnar and ciliated cuboidal. Simple ciliated columnar epithelium, it possesses columnar cells that possesses cilia over their free surface. It occurs in respiratory tract, fallopian tubes, parts of uterus and cervix. Simple ciliated cuboidal epithelium. It has cuboidal or cubical cells that bear cilia on their free surface. It occurs epidermo of nervous system and uriniferous tubules. So what are their functions? The epithelium maintains a flow of mucus, liquid or suspended material constantly in one direction. In respiratory tract, cilia helps to push the mucus towards the pharynx. In nervous system, cilia of the ventricle of the brain and central canal of the spinal cord. Next, pseudostratified epithelium. Pseudostratified epithelium. The epithelium is one cell thick but appears two layers because all the cells do not reach the free surface. Hence they are called as pseudostratified epithelium. This epithelium is of two types. Columnar epithelium, pseudostratified columnar epithelium. It has columnar cells without cilia like parotid gland, parotid salivary gland and urethra of human male. Pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. It has columnar cells. The tall cells bear cilia at the free surface and the short cells are without cilia. Functions. The pseudostratified epithelium helps in protection, movement of secretions from the glands, urine and semen in the urethra. Next slide. It is made up of more than one layer of cells. They have two types. Stratified compound epithelia. It consists of many layers of cells. The superficial layers are stratified epithelium are of four types. Stratified, it's called a stratified squamous epithelium. The cells in the layer are columnar or cuboidal with oval nuclei. It is called germinal layers. Keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. The cells of the outer few layers replace their cytoplasm with a hard waterproof protein called keratin or horns. This is called keratinization or conifications. These layers of flat dead cells are called stratum corneum or horny layers. Non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium. This epithelium does not have keratin and is unable to check water losses. Stratified cuboid epithelium. Okay? Stratified cuboid epithelium. It has outer layer of cuboidal cells and basal layer of columnar cells. Next is stratified columnar ciliated epithelium. Its outer layer consists of ciliated columnar cells and basal layer of columnar cells. It lines the larynx and upper part of the soft palate. Stratified columnar epithelium. It consists of superficial and basal layers. It covers the epiglottis and lines mammary gland ducts and parts of the urethra. Transitional compound epithelium. Transitional compound epithelium. They consist of more than one layers of cells. The transitional epithelium lines the inner surface of urinary bladder, ureter and renal pelvis. Next slide. It contains two types of epithelium. Unicellular glandular epithelium. It consists of isolated glandular epithelial cells called intraepithelial cells. What is it called? Intraepithelial cells. Example, goblet cells of alimentary tract, alimentary canal. It's called as goblet cells. Multicellular glandular epithelium. It consists of clusters of epithelial cells called extraepithelial cells. Extraepithelial cells. Next slide. A cell, tissue or organ which secretes some substances is called a gland. Based on the site of the secretion, you can call it as exocrine gland or endocrine gland. The exocrine gland, these glands have ducts to pour their secretion to their site of action. Endocrine glands, these glands do not have ducts. Ducts is a tube-like thing. They do not have ducts and pours their secretions directly into the blood or lymph. These glands are also called as ductless glands. For example, thyroid, they don't have any duct. It directly pours in the bloodstream. And these secretions are called as hormones. Next we call as heterocrine glands or mixocrine glands. These glands are partially exocrine and partially endocrine glands. For example, you can see them in pancreas, kidney, stomach and gonads. What is gonads? It is testes or ovaries. Okay. Based on number of cells, they are unicellular and multicellular. Unicellular glands, the mucus secreting goblet cells of alimentary canal, are called unicellular glands. I repeat, unicellular glands. Multicellular glands. The multicellular glands may be simple or compound glands. Simple glands, these may be simple tubular glands. Example, crypts of Lieberkühn. Crypts of Lieberkühn, simple coiled tubular glands, compound glands. These have branch system of ducts. These may be compound tubular glands. Functions of epithelia. Functions of epithelial tissue. They protect the underlying tissues from mechanical injury, entry of germs, harmful chemicals and drying up. It checks the absorption of harmful, they are specialized for urine excretion. It helps to receive various stimuli from the surroundings and convey them to the brain. It exchange of gases between the blood and the air. The epithelium of the retina, darkens the cavity of the eyeball. Epithelium also forms gland that secretes secretions such as mucus, gastric juice and intestinal juice. The germinal epithelium of the ovaries and seminiferous tubules of the testis produce ova and sperms. Next, it produces exoskeletal structure like scales, feathers, hair, nails, claws, horns and hooves. Ciliated epithelia. It's the respiratory and the genital tract. That's the ciliated epithelium. Next we'll continue. The connective tissue are most abundant and widely distributed in the body of the complex animal. Their special function of linking and supporting other tissues, organs of the body. There are three components. One is matrix, cells embedded in the matrix, fibers. Let's look at what is in the matrix. Matrix, it is a clear and viscous substance. It's vary from liquid. So blood, cartilage and solids. Okay. Cells embedded in the matrix, secreting the matrix. They have different types of tissues. Fibroblast, it produces fibers and matrix. Adipose tissue cells, which stores fat. Plasma cells, synthesis antibodies. It is also called cartwheel cells. Mast cell produce histamine, heparin and serotonin. Histamine dilates the walls of blood vessels in inflammatory and allergic reactions. Heparin checks clotting of the blood inside the blood vessels. Serotonin acts as a vasoconstrictor to check bleeding and to increase the blood pressure. Mesenchyme cells, it produces various types of connective tissue cells. Macrophages ingest cell debris, bacteria and foreign matters. Chromatophores, they are found in the dermis of the skin, which imparts color to the animals. Reticular cells, it is an form reticular tissue and are phagocytic in nature. Fibers. What are fibers? The cells secrete fibers of structure protein called collagens or elastin. These are non-living products of the cells. Non-living products of the cells. There are three types. Collagens are collagenous fibers. They are made up of collagen protein. When boiled in the water, collagen changes into gelatin. Elastic fibers are formed of protein called elastin. Reticular fibers are delicate, branched and inelastic. Next slide. The connective tissues are three types. The loose connective tissue has cells and fibers loosely arranged in the semi-fluid ground substance. Next is the areolar tissue. It's found under the epithelial tissue of the skin. Visceral organs like stomach, trachea and the walls of the blood vessels, etc. Its matrix is made up of glycoprotein. The different cells of areolar tissue are the fibrocytes, macrophages and mast cells. Functions. The tensile strength of collagen fibers and the elastics of yellow fibers protect the various organs from mechanical injuries. Adipose tissue. It is a modified type of areolar tissue. Its matrix contains large number of adipose cells along with fibrocytes and macrophages. White and yellow fibers are present in the matrix. The cells of this tissue are specialized to store fat. What is their functions? The adipose tissue mainly stores fat in the form of oil droplets. It forms a shock absorbing cushion around the eyeball and the kidneys. The tissues are also helps in the production of blood corpuscles. Next slide. Fibers and fibroblasts are found compactly packed in the dense connective tissue. This tissue is of two types. Dense regular connective tissue. In this, the collagen fibers are present in rows between many parallel bundles of fibers. White fibrous connective tissue. It mainly consists of white fibers arranged in the bundles. The fibroblasts are present in rows between the bundles. It is of two types. Tendons. The white fibrous connective tissue form the cords called tendons. These join the skeletal muscles with the bones. Sheaths. The white fibrous connective tissue also forms flat plates or sheaths. It occurs in the dermis of the skin, periosteum of the bone, perichondrium of cartilage, perichondrium of the heart, etc. We have seen the white. Now let's see yellow elastic connective tissue. It mainly consists of yellow elastic fibers. The fibers are thicker. The fibroblasts and a few white fibers are found in between the yellow fibers. It is also of two types. Ligaments. The yellow elastic connective tissue forms the cord called ligaments. These join bones to the bones. Sheaths. Yellow fibrous sheath formed by this tissue occurs in the walls of blood vessels, lungs and bronchioles. It's also present in the true vocal cord. The yellow elastic connective tissue has considerable strength and remarkable elasticity. Next is a dense irregular connective tissue. It has fibroblasts and many fibers that are oriented in different pattern. This tissue is present in the skin. Skeletal tissues, next slide. These tissues form the endoskeleton of the vertebrate. They form a rigid framework which supports the body, protects the vital organs, and helps in locomotions. Cartilage. It is a tough, semi-transparent, elastic and flexible tissue. The cartilage cells lie in groups of 2 to 3 in fluid-filled space called lacunae. The cartilage is bounded externally by a stiff sheath called perichondrium containing white fibrous tissue. The cartilages are 3 types. Hyaline cartilage, it is flexible and forms articular surfaces at the joints of long bones, where it is called articular cartilage. It has a clear, translucent, bluish green matrix. Fibrous cartilage. It has well-developed fibers in the matrix. It is 2 types, white fibrous cartilage and yellow elastic cartilage. When the matrix of the cartilage contains granules of calcium carbonate, the cartilage is called as calcified cartilage. It's called as calcified cartilage. Bones. It is hard, rigid, connective tissue. These are non-pliable ground substance. Non-pliable ground substance rich in calcium salts and collagen fibers, providing strength to the bones. The cells of the bones are bound in a calcified matrix made up of osins. The bone cells known as osteocytes lodged in spaces called lacunae. Periosteum. It is the thick and tough sheath that forms an envelope around the bone. It is composed of collagen fibrous tissue. The periosteum contains blood vessels. Matrix. It is composed of a protein called as osins. The Haversian canal, a characteristic feature of mammalian bones, are present in the matrix. The characteristic is a word which you really have to take into special consideration. Endosteum. It is present outer to the bone marrow cavity. It comprises white fibrous tissue and the bone forming cells called as osteoblast. Bone marrow. It is the vascular, soft, pulpy connective tissue found in the bone marrow cavity of long bones, marrow cavity of long bones like humerus and femur. Bone marrow is of 2 types, yellow marrow and red marrow. Yellow and red. Spongy bone. It contains a network of thin and irregularly longitudinal and transverse bony bars called trabeculae. Compact bone. It is hard and compact and found in the shaft of long bones. Vascular tissues. These are motile connective tissue consisting of fluid matrix and free cells. The matrix is without fibers. Blood. It is a mobile watery fluid with a slightly salty taste. It is composed of plasma and cells called blood corpuscles. The volume of blood in an adult is about 5 liters. It is slightly alkaline. Plasma is a yellowish straw colored liquid which is composed mainly of water. About 55% of total includes plasma proteins, nutrients, hormones, antibodies, enzymes, minerals, salts, and waste products. So what is the functions of it? It helps in transport of substances, provides body immunity, prevents the blood losses, retains fluid in blood, maintains blood pH, and conducts heat to the skin for dissipation. Next slide. The blood cells are corpuscles or blood corpuscles form about 45% of the blood volume. The process of blood cells formation is called hemopoiesis. It's called as hemopoiesis. Erythrocytes or red blood corpuscles are the most abundant element in the blood. These carry red colored oxygen carrying pigment called hemoglobin. It's called as hemoglobin. The human RBCs are smaller than the white blood corpuscles. The formation of erythrocytes is called erythropoiesis. Leukocytes or WBC lack hemoglobin and they are colorless. They are nucleated with rounded or irregular shape. Thrombocytes, these are small colorless plate-like discs having size of about 2 to 3 micrometer, very tiny. Their numbers range from 0.15 to 0.4 million per millimeter cube. Functions of the blood. Blood transports oxygen from respiratory organ to the tissues and carbon dioxide from tissues to the respiratory organ. It transports nutrients to all parts of the body. Blood helps in healing of injuries by maintaining necessary supplies for the repair of damaged tissues. Blood maintains the constant body temperature by distributing the heat throughout the body. Lymphocytes and eosinophils produce antitoxins to neutralize the toxins released by the microbes. Lymph. It is the mobile connective tissue comprising lymph plasma and lymph corpuscles. It is present in vessels called lymph vessels. Lymph is formed of liquid components and form elements or cells. It contains about 94% water and 6% organic and inorganic substances. Lymph perform the following functions in animals. What are the functions it follows? It performs? It plays an important role in the defense of the body, especially against invading organisms. They digest products of fat. Digestion enters the lymph vessels present in the villi of small intestine. Lymph helps to maintain the blood volume by returning the interstitial fluid back to the blood during circulation. The lymph node produces lymphocytes. It keeps the tissue cells moist. Next slide. Tissue consists of star-shaped reticular cells whose protoplasmic processes join to form a cellular network. The reticular fibers are present on the reticular cells. Function. This tissue provides strength and support as it forms the supporting framework of many organs. The reticular cells are phagocytic and forms the dense mechanism of the body. dense mechanism of the body. Moving on to the next slide, the cells of the pigmented connective tissue are irregular and are called as pigment cells. Melanin is produced by other cells and is called the melanocytes. Melanocytes. And what is the functions of this? It gives colors to the structure. We have this particular color because of melanin. Next slide. The tissue occurs as a fetal or embryonic connective tissue as it is present in the umbilical cord. The mucoid tissue contains a jelly-like substance called Watson's jelly and some delicate collagen fibers and primitive types of fibroblast. The functions of the connective tissue: the adipose tissue stores fat. The cartilage and the bones form a supporting framework for the body. Bone marrow is the source of blood corpuscles. Bone marrow is the source of blood corpuscles. The collagen fibers help in repair of the injured tissues. Blood and lymph carry materials from one part to another in the body. Very interesting, isn't it? Particularly the lymph, they will ask questions, and so you got to read that a couple of times to know exactly the basic things about the lymph. Okay. Next we are moving on to muscular tissue, muscular tissue. There are a lot of muscles in the body. There are like tiny muscles to compact or muscles that can carry us, cycling muscles and all of this kind of. Muscular tissue. The muscle tissue consists of elongated and contractile cells called muscle cells or myocytes. Due to their elongated nature, the muscle cells are also called muscle fibers. Each muscle fiber is covered by a membranous sheath called sarcolemma. Nice name, sarcolemma. The contractile structure of the muscle cell are called myofibrils. It is made up of myofilaments. There are two types, one thicker myosins and thinner actin. Next slide. The muscles can be grouped into three types based on the structure, location and function. Structure, location and function. Striated or striped muscle is also called as skeletal or voluntary muscles. Next is cardiac muscle, heart muscles. Next is non-striated, also called as unstriped or visceral smooth muscle, which is also called as involuntary muscle. Involuntary, it can move itself. Striated muscles. The striated or skeletal muscle form about 40% of body weight. Total body weight is 40%. These muscles are attached and bring about the movement of various bones of the skeleton, so are called as skeletal muscles. Each striated muscle is a long, narrow, cylindrical, unbranched cell. Non-striated muscle. The non-striated muscles are found in the posterior part of esophagus, stomach, intestine, lungs, urogenital, urinary bladder, blood vessels, iris, ciliary bodies of the eyes, dermis of the skin. There is no sarcolemma. However, the fiber is enclosed by plasma membrane. The smooth muscles help in the peristalsis which occur in the tubular viscera. Tubular viscera. The cardiac muscles are contractile tissues present only in the heart and in the walls of large veins which enter the heart. The cardiac muscle fibers show the characters of both unstriped and striped muscle fibers. The fibers are uninucleate and the nuclei lie near the center. The fibers never get fatigued. Blood capillaries penetrate the cardiac muscle fiber, hence they have very rich blood supply. These muscle fibers are supplied with both central and autonomic nervous system. Central comes from the brain, autonomic is also attached to the brain, but it is a peripheral thing. Not under the will of the animal or the people. The muscles support the bones and other structures. Muscles are essential during parturition, while giving birth. Muscles are responsible for heartbeat production of the sound and peristalsis in the tubular viscera. Next slide. The neural tissue is ectodermal in origin. It is specialized to receive stimuli and conducts impulses for controlling and coordinating body functions. The packing cells are called Schwann cells in the peripheral nervous system and neuroglia cells in the central nervous system. Yes. Cyton. It contains neuroplasm, a spherical nucleus, endoplasmic reticulum, mitochondria, Golgi bodies, ribosomes, lysosomes, fat globules, Nissl granules, etc. Neutrites. The process arising from neurons are called neutrites. I repeat, the processes arising from the neuron are called as neutrites. These are dendrites and an axon. Axon is single, but dendrites may vary from 1 to several. Dendrites may vary from 1 to several. Next slide. The nerve fibers are elongated and slender processes of the neurons, which are formed by ensheathing of axons. A space of 15 to 20 nanometer occurs between axolemma and the covering sheath. It is called periaxonal space. Myelinated nerve fibers, an axon covered by myelin sheath is called as myelinated or medullated nerve fibers. Non-myelinated nerve fibers. A non-medullated or non-myelinated fibers consist of an axis cylinder enclosed by neurolemma and connective tissues. Afferent nerve fibers. The afferent nerve fibers carry the nerve's impulses from the central nervous system. Efferent nerve system, it is just the opposite. They carry the nerve impulses from the central nervous system to the effector organs. Okay. Next slide. A nerve is a complex bundle of nerve fibers enclosed together by a common sheath of connective tissue along with the blood vessels. Each nerve fiber is covered by a thin sheath of connective tissue called endoneurium. It is called as endoneurium. A number of nerve fibers, each covered by its own endoneurium, are joined together to form a bundle called fasciculus or fasciculae. Sensory nerves. These nerve endings bring sensory impulses. Motor nerves. These nerves carry messages from central nervous system to part of the body and the effector organ to perform their function. Next we have the mixed nerves. The nerves contain both sensory and motor fibers. They have both sensory and motor fibers. So it's called as mixed nerve. Next is the neuroglia or glial cells are supporting cells which form a packing around the neuron in the brain, spinal cord and ganglia. Neuroglia make up more than one half volume of neural tissue in our body. Next slide. These are specialized neurons or neuron-like cells which secrete biologically active substances that are effective in other structures, often at a different site. Often at a different site. Functions of neural tissue. Functions of neural tissue. The neural tissue coordinates and controls the functioning of different parts of the body. It coordinates and controls the functioning of different parts of the body. These are specialized neurons or neuron-like cells which secrete biologically active substances that are effective in other structures, often at a different site. Often at a different site. Function of neural tissue. The neural tissue coordinates and controls the functioning of different parts of the body. It controls the different parts of the body. So that's the main function. The neural tissue helps in mediating conscious activities, mediating the conscious activities, to do this, do that. Makes us aware about environment around us, makes us aware of the environment. The tissue is also a seat of experience, memories, etc. The sensation of smell, vision, taste, hearing, pain, pleasure, etc. are performed through the nervous tissue The information about the changes in various internal structure is provided by nerves. It is provided by nerves. The nervous tissue bring about an appropriate response to each and every stimulus. Now we are going to move on to earthworm. We'll be studying about earthworm, followed with cockroach and then frog. Okay? So just to know the inner details of all these small creatures, and then we'll move on to human being. Okay? So let's know what is earthworm. Earthworm, you all know, it's farmer's friend. So that's what we are going to see. Earthworm make the soil porous by digging burrows in the soil. Hence, they are called as friends of the farmers. Friends of the farmers. The nitrogenous waste and other waste products of the earthworm form food for the plants. This process of increasing fertility of soil by earthworm is called as vermicomposting. It is called as vermicomposting. In India, it can be used as medicine to cure jaundice, piles, diarrhea, bladder stone, gout, etc. I haven't a clue whether it can be used for that. For MCQs, yes. In some countries like China, Japan, Australia and Myanmar, earthworms are used as food. They'll be eating earthworm. Earthworms are eaten by frogs, birds, which are used to man in some ways. They are an important part of the food chain. These are used for scientific studies and dissected in biological laboratories for academic studies. We have done that when we are kids. So that is what we are going to do. What are the disadvantages? It may damage young and tender plants by eating them. Okay. During rainy season, they make burrows and cause soil erosion. They spoil the playgrounds by digging burrows in them. Some earthworms are intermediate host for some parasites such as tapeworm of chicken and lung nematodes of pigs. So intermediate parasite. The burrows of earthworm in the banks of irrigation channels sometimes causes leakage of water. This is the gross part of the earthworm. Now this next slide. Earthworm is a reddish brown terrestrial invertebrate that inhabit the upper layer of the moist soil. Inhabit the upper layer of the moist soil. During daytime, it lives in the burrow made by boring and swallowing the soil. In the garden, these animals can be found out by their fecal deposits called worm casting. It's called as worm casting. The two common Indian species of earthworm are Peritima and lumbricus. Peritima and lumbricus. Systematic position. If you look at the systematic position, what kingdom it belongs? It kingdom to Animalia. What phylum it is belongs? It is Annelida. Metameric segmentation. Order Haplorhexida. It is terrestrial and no asexual reproduction. What family it has got? Megascoluridia. Male pores are behind the clitellum. Okay. Now genus Peritima. It is called as Peritima. Septae occurs in a complete ring on almost all segments of the body. Okay. And it's got about 14 to 16 segments. So if we look at the next species, is called as Postuma. Postuma, it is a genital papillae. There are of 17 to 18 segments. Male genital pores on the 18th segment. So that is just differentiating how to find the male and female. Yeah. These tiny things the MCQs will ask. The next slide is earthworm inhabits almost all areas over the world except Arctic and Antarctica. There are about 500 species of earthworm. 13 species occurs in India. Of 500, only 13 are there in India. Next slide. Earthworm lives in moist soil rich in humus. They are nocturnal animals. Nocturnal. They come out only in the night. The earthworm moves by crawling with its body, remains on the ground. It moves by muscular contraction and relaxation of the body muscles, which are aided by chitinous septae, which is aided by the chitinous septae. S-shaped setae. Earthworms can travel about 15 centimeters in a minute. In 60 seconds, it travels 15 centimeters. Next slide. The earthworm eats dead and decaying organic matters found in the soil. It is omnivorous. The undigested food along with the soil is passed out through the anus as small piles called as worm casting. Next slide. Earthworm is a hermaphrodite animal. Earthworm is a hermaphrodite animal. It breeds in the rainy season. It is prondrous, that is, male sex organ mature earlier than the female. Self-fertilization is not possible. Self-fertilization is not possible. Only cross-fertilization occurs in them. The copulation occurs when two earthworms closely attached to each other by their ventral surface in the way. Then the two worms separate after the exchange of spermatozoa. Several eggs and spermatozoa are packed in egg cases. It is called as ootheca. Ootheca or cocoon. About 4 baby earthworms develop in one cocoon. From one cocoon there are 4 baby earthworms develop. 4. The earthworms has a great power of regeneration. It can regenerate. If it is cut into 2 parts, its anterior half develops into the tail. Anterior half can develop the tail. But the posterior half, the head can be formed only if 4 or 5, 6 anterior segments are removed. So both are possible. Anterior, posterior will be there, but posterior it is just the 4 and 6. Earthworm can defend itself only by ejecting foul-smelling coelomic fluids through the dorsal pores. Size, shape and color, it has a long cylindrical body. The anterior end is pointed, but there is no distinct head. The posterior end is rounded. The size of an adult worm is about 150 millimeters long. It is about 15 centimeters and 3 to 5 millimeters wide. The ventral surface and bears a dark median line. The body of the earthworm is divided into more than hundreds short segments which are similar. Metameres about 100 to 120 in numbers. The segments are also divided internally by the septa. This is called true segmentation or metamerism. The first segment called peristomium. It is called as first segment is peristomium. A fleshy lobe called prostomium covers the mouth. The segmentation in the first few segments is visible externally without corresponding internal septa. The clitellum is a prominent circular muscular band present in the 14, 15 and 16 segment. It divides the body into pre-clitellar, clitellar and post-clitellar region. Next slide. The female genital pore is a single aperture present mid-ventrally in the 14th segment. Two pairs of genital papillae are present in 17th and 19th segment which help the animal in copulation. In the grooves of 5th and 9th segment, four pairs of spermathecae pores are present ventrolaterally. Ventrolaterally. These are connected to the sperm storing organs called spermatheca. It's called a spermatheca. On the dorsal side, minute pores are found called as dorsal pores. This fluid keeps the body surface of the earthworm moist. That finishes the study of earthworm. More look at the pictures. Yes. Now we are going to move on to earthworm. We will be studying about earthworm followed with cockroach and then frog. Okay. So just to know the inner details of all these small creatures and then we'll move on to human being. Okay. So let's know what is earthworm. Earthworm, you all know it's farmer's friend. So that's what we are going to see. Cockroaches are the common insect. It is found in houses and many places. They are brown, black, bright yellow, red, green in all colors. Their size ranges from 0.25 inches to 2 inches. 0.25 to 2 inches. So it's about that size. So it will be from here to here. Systematic position, distribution, habitat, habits, locomotion, breeding, morphology, anatomy. In India, two species of cockroaches are found, Periplante americana and Beta orientalis. Beta orientalis. Let us look at the kingdom. Next slide. Kingdom Animalia, phylum Arthropoda, that is chitinous exoskeleton, joined appendages and hemocoel are present. Class, it belongs to Insecta. 3 pairs of legs are present. Order, Blattodea, chewing mouth parts, gradual metamorphosis and joint sets. Family, Blattidae, that is similar legs with large flat coxae. Genus, Periplanetae, presence of wings in both the sexes. Species, Americana, that is light color and large size, that is 32 to 28 millimeters. The cockroaches are tropical and subtropical insects. They have reached all parts of the world with trading chips. All parts of the world with trading chips. Epithelial, connective, muscular and neural. Epithelial, connective, muscular and neural. Cockroaches inhabit with warm, dark and damp places. They are found in drains, kitchens, restaurants, gudowns, yes, storehouses, railway wagons, ships, etc. It shows some peculiar habits. They are nocturnal. These are omnivorous and eat all types of animal and vegetable foods. They are sexual dimorphism. Male and female sexes can be seen externally. The young cockroaches called nymph the nymph gradually becomes adult under the parental care. The body of the cockroach is dorsoventrally flattened, elongated and bilaterally symmetrical. If you cut it, it will be symmetrical. Bilaterally symmetrical. The adult cockroach is about 34 to 53 millimeters long with wings that extend beyond the tip of the abdomen in males. The cockroach's body is covered by a hard chitinous exoskeleton made up of tough plates called sclerites. It is called tough plates called sclerites. The exoskeleton protects the body and provides spaces for the attachment of muscles. The adjacent sclerites are joined together by thin, soft, flexible arthroid membrane. Now look at the head part of it. The head of cockroaches is triangular in shape and lies anteriorly at right angles to the longitudinal body axis. It is formed by the fusion of six embryonic segments. The sclerites of head are fused to form a compact head capsule called vertex. Compact head cortex called vertex. Mouth. It is a narrow opening that lies at the base of preoral cavity. It bounded by the mouth parts and leads into the pharynx. The cockroach's mouth parts of biting and chewing type. Its parts is like a biting and chewing type. It attaches to the head capsules. Okay. They are called as labrum. It is called the upper lip. Mandibles. It lies on the side of the mouth just behind the labrum. First maxilla. It is the part of the maxilla that lies beneath the mandibles. Second maxilla or labium. It is called lower lip. It's a single structure. It's formed by second maxillae. Neck. It's a slender, flexible tube articulating the head with the thorax. You can see that cockroach is looking like this, the head, it is articulated with the thorax. It is supported by a few ring-like plates called thorax. It forms the middle of the body. It consists three segments: prothorax, mesothorax, metathorax. Okay, sclerites. Each thoracic segment is enclosed by four chitinous skeletal sclerites. Number one, dorsal tergum, ventral sternum, two lateral pleura. The tergum of the prothorax is called the protergum or pronotum. The tergum of the mesothorax is called mesotergum or mesonotum. The tergum of the metathorax is termed the metatergum or metanotum, thoracic appendages. It contains two parts, legs, wings. Legs are joined and a pair is present in each thoracic segment, which are three in numbers, based on the segments that bears them. Legs are prothoracic, mesothoracic and metathoracic, or simply prolegs, or it is called simply prolegs. Wings, these are paired structure. Mesothorax, metathorax. Four wings called tegmina, Tegmina. It used to cover the hind wings and they are at rest. When they are at rest, it covers the hind wings. Abdomen, it is the largest part of the body. It is composed of 10 segments in adult and 11th in the embryo. It is dorso-ventrally flattened, broader at the anterior end and narrow posteriorly. Okay, broader at the anterior and narrower at posterior. Sclerites, it enclosed by 4 sclerites, dorsotergum, 1 ventral sternum and 2 lateral pleura. There are 10 terga. The 7th tergum covers the 8th tergum in male and 8th and 9th terga in the female. This is an important thing. Only 8th in the male, 8th and 9th terga in the female. The 10th tergum is large and notched in the middle The abdomen bears 9 sterna while the 10th one is absent. It contains dorsal anus, ventral male genital pores and gonadophysis. Abdominal appendages. What are the appendages in the abdomen? These appendages are a pair of anal cerci. Appendages are bits of pieces that is coming out. Like our fingers are called as appendages. Appendages are a pair of anal cerci, a pair of anal style and gonadophysis or external genitalia. Okay. Apertures. The anus or anal cerci lies beneath 10th tergum. They are called as podical plates or paraprotects. Genital aperture of male cockroaches lies just below the anus on one of the gonadophysis. Okay. Abdominal spiracles are 8 pair structures. Abdominal spiracles are 8 pair structures. Sting glands. A pair of sting glands is present between the 5th and 6th abdominal terga. Anatomy. Look at the anatomy of the cockroach. The body wall contains cuticle, epidermis and membranes. Cuticle, epidermis and membrane. Cuticle is impermeable to water. Its non-cellular surface layer, epidermis, consists of single layer of columnar cells. Body cavity in the adult is found in the small cavities only around the gonads. Okay. The body cavity is filled with hemolymph and is called as hemocoel. Endoskeletons. Certain processes of exoskeleton extends into the body and form endoskeletal elements. These provides attachment to the muscles and hence it is called as apodermis. Next is the digestive system. Cockroach is 6 to 7 centimeters in length. It is divisible into 3 parts. Okay. Foregut where the food is crunched, initially bowed by mandible and mixes with saliva and passes to the short tubular pharynx. Up to this is the foregut. The pharynx is bent to join a narrow tubular passage called esophagus. Okay. From crops, the food enters a conical and muscular part called gizzards. Gizzards are proventriculus having outer layer of thick circular muscles. Okay. Then the foregut. Its posterior end projects in the form of narrow tube into the midgut called stomodial. Stomodial valve. Entire foregut is lined by cuticle. Entire foregut is lined by cuticle. Midgut. It is narrow tube of uniform diameter. A ring of 6 to 8 blind tubules called gastric or hepatic CK present at the junction of foregut and midgut secretes digestive juices. Secretes digestive juices. Hindgut. What is in the hindgut? It is broader than the midgut and is divisible into ileum, colon and rectum. Ileum, colon and rectum. A ring of about 100 to 150 fine yellow colored threads like filaments, Malpighian tubules is joined to the beginning of the ileum. Colon is a wide coiled tube. The papillae present in the rectum absorbs water and salts from the undigested food. Now moving on to circulatory system. Okay. In circulatory system, it is the open type. Circulatory system is open type. The blood vessels are poorly developed and blood flows freely in the body cavity. Blood flows freely in the body cavity, which is called hemocoel. It is called as hemocoel. It contains colorless plasma and corpuscles called hemocytes. Corpuscles called as hemocytes. From aorta, blood passes into head sinuses and then into perivisceral and perineural sinuses. Perivisceral and perineural sinuses. Next is the respiratory system. Respiratory system. The respiratory system is comprised of network of blind glistering white air tubules called tracheae. The air tubules is called tracheae. The trachea are connected to outside by 10 pairs of lateral apertures and it's called as spiracles. It is connected to the lateral apertures called as spiracles. During rest, some of the spiracles are open so that oxygen can continuously reach the body fluid present in the terminal region of the tracheoles. Terminal region of the tracheoles. Exchange of gas occurs between the living cells and the body fluid. Living cells and the body fluid, and that is the respiration. It is so simple and is easy to understand. Moving on to excretory system. Excretory system also should be simple. Cockroach is the uricotelic. Main excretory product of it is called as uric acid. That is what is called uricotelic. The main excretory organ of cockroach are Malpighian tubules. It takes part in both excretion and osmoregulations. Excretion and osmoregulations. The tubules are lined by cuboidal, brush-bordered glandular cells that extract the nitrogenous waste matter from the hemolymph, and discharge it into the ileum as uric acid. It excretes them into the ileum as the uric acid. It consists of series of fused segmental arranged ganglia joined by pairs of longitudinal connectives in the head region. The brain is represented by supraesophageal ganglion. Supraesophageal ganglions, which supplies nerves to the antenna and compound eyes, which is the sense organ. The sense organ in the cockroaches are the antenna, eyes, maxillary palps, labial palps, anal cerci, etc. The compound eyes are situated at the dorsal surface of the head. Dorsal surface of the head. Each eye consists of about 2000 hexagonal facets or commotida, C-O-M-M-A-T-I-D-I-A, commotida. Cockroaches are dioecious animals. Cockroaches are dioecious animals. That is, both sexes have well-developed reproductive organs. Male reproductive system. Let's see what is the male reproductive system in the cockroach. It consists of a pair of testes lying one on each lateral side in the fourth and sixth abdominal segment. The fourth and sixth abdominal segment. From each testis arises a thin vas deferens which opens into the ejaculatory duct through seminal vesicles. Ejaculatory duct through seminal vesicle. A characteristic mushroom-shaped gland is present in the sixth and seventh abdominal segments, which functions as an axillary reproductive gland. Axillary reproductive gland. The external genitalia are represented by male gonopophysis or flomere. The sperms are surrounded in the seminal vesicles and are glued together in the form of bundles called spermatophores. It is bundles called spermatophores which are discharged during copulations. Okay. Female reproductive system. So we have read about the male reproductive system. It is a bit complicated, but it happens automatically. Female reproductive system. It consists of two large ovaries lying laterally in the second and sixth abdominal segment. Each ovary is formed of a group of 8 ovarian tubules. 8 ovarian tubules or ovarioles containing a chain of developing ova. A pair of spermatheca is present in the sixth segment, which opens into the genital chambers. The male and female cockroaches come together by their posterior ends. Sperms are liberated from the spermatophores and reach the left spermatothecae slowly. The eggs come from both the ovaries alternately into the common oviduct and passes through the female genital pores into the genital chambers where they are fertilized. So where they are fertilized by the sperms coming from the left spermatotheca. The fertilized eggs are encased in oothecae. Ootheca is dark reddish to blackish brown capsule about 8 millimeters long. It is about 8 millimeters long. On an average, female produces 9 to 10 oothecae. 9 to 10 oothecae, each containing 14 to 16 eggs. The development of Americana, meaning there is a development through the nymphal stages. The nymphs looks very much like adults. The nymph looks very much like adult. The nymph grows by molting about 13 times to reach the adult form. Frog is important thing we always read in biology, mainly because it is easy to dissect it and learn a lot of inner anatomy in it. Anatomy in the sense, when you cut open it, you can see how the heart works, how the intestine is placed, and how the mouth. You can almost see everything without much difficulties. Let's move on. Frog is a useful animal for human being. It's a useful animal. It feeds on insects which destroys crops, and frog eats up mosquitoes, which are the carriers of various diseases. Mosquito borne dengue fever and chikungunya. There are a lot of diseases. In India and many other countries used frog muscles of legs and some parts of the food. Baby frogs are used as fish baits. Baby frogs are used as a fish baits. Frogs are mainly used for researches in medical science and pharmacology. It helps to maintain the ecological balance by forming and part of the food chain. Forming and part of the food chain. So now look at how we classify this. Obviously the kingdom is Animalia, and after kingdom we learn about phylum. It comes under chordata. Notochord in the embryonic stage. Okay. So after phylum it's the class. In class it comes with the amphibia. Why it is called as amphibia? It can live in water as well as in the land and lacks exoskeleton. After that is order. Order is you have the name for it. Pharyngoglossa has the long tongue and tympanum and separate eustachian tubes, right? Next is the family. Ranidae is the name given to the whole family of that particular frog. Lacks cartilaginous disc, teeth only on the upper jaw. Next is the genus Rana, where the sternum is largely bony. And next is the species Tigrina. Upper surface is of olive green, mottled with dark spots. Under surface is white. Fifth one is externally. Next slide is about frog distribution. There are about 2,600 species of frogs all over the world. In India, they are found about 4 species of frog. Mainly there are about 4 species of frogs in India. One is the Rana tigrina, most widely distributed, found all over the world except in some countries like Australia, New Zealand, southern part of the South America. It is the largest species of frog seen in India. Okay. Next is the Rana synoptictis. Synoptictis. Cyanophyllys. It is found mainly in Rajasthan, UP and Madhya Pradesh. Then there is the Rana malabaricus, which is commonly found in Maharashtra. Then the Rana tempondraria, it is common British frog. Okay. Next slide is the Rana tigrina, is the most common frog found in India. It is also called bullfrog. Its large size and loud and it is a loud voice. It is called it. It's found in the near freshwaters, marshal areas, ditches, ponds, and shallow water bodies. It can respire both through skin and lungs. Frogs breed in water and spends its early life in water. It is unable to drink water and absorb it through the skin. It gets its food from live insects, worms and spiders. Frogs feeds on insects, worms and spiders. It is a carnivorous animal. The prey is captured with the help of the tongue. Now how it moves? Swimming. The frog's body is boat-shaped. During swimming, the hind limb are alternatively folded and straightened quickly. Okay? The backward stroke of the hind limbs pushes the body forward. When it pushes the body forward. Leaping. The frog moves on the land by leaping. In leaping, the hind limbs are folded and strengthened. Alternately. When the hind limbs are extended, the frog's body pushed forward. Frog's body is pushed forward and upward in the air. That is leaping. Next is walking. You can also walk. During walking, each limb is lifted and swinging forward and placed on the ground again, right? Frogs breed in rainy season. Rainy season, you see a lot of frogs, right? Male frog produces a high-pitched croaking sound to attract the female. The male frog lacks copulatory organs. The sexual embrace in which the eggs and sperms are discharged in water is called amphilux or false copulation. It is characteristic of amphibians. It is characteristics of amphibians. The shedding of eggs by the female at the end of amphluxus is called as the oviposition. It's called the oviposition. Fertilization in frogs is external. Fertilization in frog is external. The fertilized eggs develop into fish-like tailed larvae, the tadpoles which respire through the gills. They can also darken or lighten their green shades to blend with the background and thus prevent easy detection. Thus prevents easy detection. This protective coloration is called mimicry. This protective coloration is called mimicry. Frog has ovoid, streamlined and slightly flattened body. It's about 10 to 15 centimeters long and show bilateral symmetry. The skin of the frog is naked, smooth, moist and slippery. Ventral side of the body is pale yellow. Dorsal side of the body is generally olive green with dark irregular spots. Head. The head is triangular in shape with a blunt snout. It bears mouth, external nares, eyes, brows, spouts and eardrums on the upper side and throat on the lower side. Look at the mouth. The mouth extends along the entire border of the head. The mouth gets open only during feeding. External nares. At the top of anterior end, the head bears two small apertures called external nares. Eyes. A little behind the nostril, two large eyes are present, situated along the sides. The sides are spherical and protruded laterally. Each eye has a thick upper and a thin lower eyelid. The upper part of the lower eyelid is modified into a transparent fold called nictitating membrane. It is called as nictitating membrane. Eardrum. A little behind and below the eyes on each side of the head, a circular patch of tightly stretched dark skin is present. This is called tympanic membrane or tympanum or the eardrum. Tympanic membrane or tympanum or the eardrum. Now look at the throat. The floor of the head is occupied by a soft throat. In a male frog, there is a pair of bluish wrinkled patches of skin called vocal sac. Trunk. The trunk contains an anterior portion called thorax and a posterior larger portion called abdomen. A pair of forelimb and hindlimb is attached to the trunk. At the end of the trunk, between the hind legs, there is a circular aperture called cloacal aperture. There is a circular aperture called cloacal aperture through which feces, urine and gametes are passed out. Next is skin. It consists of outer epidermis and inner dermis. The innermost layer of the epidermis consists of Malpighian layer. It's called as Malpighian layer or stratum germinatum. Stratum germinatum. Dermis layer contains mucus, glands and poison glands. It contains poison glands. The poison glands secrete poisonous fluid which protects the frog from their enemies. The body cavity of frogs, accommodate different organ systems such as digestive, circulatory, respiratory, nervous, excretory and reproductive system. So it is contains all these systems. Next we are going to look at the coelom, a very small pericardial cavity around the heart which contains pericardial fluid and a very large pleuroperitoneal cavity around the other viscera that has coelomic fluid. There are coelomic fluid except kidneys. Kidneys are behind that, except kidneys. The canal of frog is short because frogs are carnivorous and hence the length of the intestine is reduced. It contains mouth, buccopharyngeal cavity, esophagus, a stomach, a small intestine, rectum and cloaca. Mouth. In frog, teeth are not used for chewing but they prevent the escape of live food. So it is not for biting, chewing. Esophagus. It is a narrow short tube which continues in large and distended stomach. It helps in converting the food into chyme. And secretes gastric juice containing HCl and proteolytic enzymes. Intestines. The intestinal wall has several finger-like folds called villi and microvilli. Projecting into its lumen to enhance the surface area of absorption for digested food. The first part of small intestine lying parallel to the stomach is called duodenum. It is called as duodenum. The urinary bladder opens into cloacal chambers through ureter. The cloaca opens externally by a cloacal aperture. It includes gastric glands, intestinal glands, liver and pancreas. The gastric glands secrete gastric juice and intestinal glands secrete intestinal juice, which contains a number of digestive enzymes. The liver produces bile, which is temporarily stored in the gallbladder. Before being released into the duodenum. Pancreas is an irregular elongated gland that produces pancreatic juice containing several digestive enzymes. Digestion of the food. It takes place by the action of HCl and gastric juices secreted from the walls of the stomach. The partially digested food is called chyme, is passed from stomach to the first part of the intestine. It is stomach to the first part of the intestine, then the duodenum. The duodenum receives the bile from the gallbladder and pancreatic juice from the pancreas through common bile duct. Okay, the common bile duct from the gallbladder and from the pancreatic juice, right? Digested food is absorbed by the numerous finger-like folds in the inner wall of intestines called villi and microvilli. Next slide. It respires three modes of respiration. Cutaneous respiration. Frogs respire only by the skin when under the water or deep under the mud. There's only the skin respiration. Buccopharyngeal respiration. Buccopharyngeal respiration. It occurs thin vascular moist lining of the buccal pharyngeal cavity. Then the pulmonary respiration. It occurs by the lungs and is less frequent than the cutaneous and buccopharyngeal respiration. Cutaneous and the buccopharyngeal respiration. The lungs are a pair of elongated pink colored sac-like structures. Pink colored sac-like structures present in the upper part of the trunk region, which is called as the thorax. Air enters through the nostril into the buccal cavity and here and then to the lungs. Into the buccal cavity and then to the lungs. Moving on to circulatory system. Circulatory system of the frog is well developed and is of closed type. It also has a lymphatic system. The blood vascular system includes heart, blood and blood vessels. Heart, blood and the blood vessels. Now look at the heart. It is muscular structure situated in the upper part of the body cavity. It has 3 chambers. Remember that it has got only 3 chambers. We have 4 chambers. The heart is covered by a membrane called as pericardium. Pericardium. There are 2 axillary chambers in the frog's heart. A tubular truncus arterius placed on the ventral side of the right auricle and a triangular sinus venosus present on the dorsal side of the heart. Sinus venosus receives blood through the major veins called vena cava and opens into right auricle. The left auricle receives oxygenated blood from the lungs by a common pulmonary vein. The ventricle opens into a sac like conus arteriosus on the ventral side of the heart. The former is called hepatic portal system and the later it is called as renal portal system. Now look at the blood vessels. The blood vessels found in the frogs are arteries, arterioles, veins, venules and blood capillaries. Arteries carry blood from the heart to different parts of the body. The arterioles branch out to form capillaries, which further unite to form venules. Blood. The blood is composed of plasma and blood cells. The blood cells are red blood corpuscles or the erythrocytes. White blood corpuscles are leukocytes and platelets. Red blood corpuscles are nucleated and there is nucleus in it and contains red colored pigment, namely hemoglobin. It has got hemoglobin like human being. Let's look at the lymphatic system. The lymphatic system comprises of lymph vessels. Lymph is a mobile connective tissue filtered out from blood through capillaries. It contains plasma and white corpuscles and lack red blood cells. There is no red blood cells. The nervous system. The nervous system of frog consists of central nervous system, a peripheral nervous system, and autonomic nervous system. It includes both nervous system and endocrine system. That is the autonomic nervous system. Let us look at the central nervous system. It includes brain, spinal cord. The brain is enclosed in a bony structure called cranium. It is called as cranium or brain box. And the spinal cord lies in the ventral column. The above side is the ventral, bottom is the dorsal. So it allows the ventral column. The brain is classified as forebrain, midbrain and hindbrain. It contains nerves arising from the central nervous system and extending into the organs of the body. 10 pairs of cranial nerves arise from the brain and 9 pairs of spinal nerves supply the trunk and limbs. This is trunk and the limbs. Autonomic nervous system. Now look at what is the autonomic nervous system. It consists of sympathetic nervous system and parasympathetic nervous system. In sympathetic nervous system, there are 2 ganglionic chain, and in parasympathetic nervous system is isolated ganglia in the viscera. Okay. It also has endocrine system. The endocrine is the chemical coordination of various organs of the body and is carried out by hormones. It is carried out by hormones which are secreted by the endocrine glands. It is secreted by the endocrine glands. The prominent endocrine gland found in the frog are the pituitary gland, thyroid gland, parathyroid gland, thymus, pineal body, pancreatic islets, adrenals and gonads. Now look at the axial skeleton that includes skull located in the head and vertebral column situated in the trunk. Appendicular skeleton includes limb bone in the arms and legs and girdles that connect the limb bones with vertebral column. The skull consists of cranium, sense capsules and jaws. Vertebral column consists of 9 ring-like structure and a long urostyle. Each forelimb contains many bones, namely a humerus in the upper arm, radioulna in the forearm, carpals in the wrist and metacarpals in the palm and phalanges in the fingers. A femur is the thigh, a tibiofibular in the shank, tarsals in the ankle, metatarsals in the foot, phalanges in the toes. Now let's see the reproductive system. Frogs have well organized male reproductive system and female reproductive system, right? It shows sexual dimorphism. There are male reproductive system is called male frog, female reproductive system is called female frog. Male reproductive system, it includes a pair of yellowish ovoid testes which are found adhered to the upper part of the kidney by a double fold of peritoneum called mesorchium. From testes, 10 to 12 vas efferentia arises. They enter the kidney on their side and open into bladder canal. The urogenital ducts comes out of the kidney and opens into cloaca. Okay. Next is the female reproductive system. Female reproductive system, it consists of a pair of ovaries situated near the kidneys and there is no functional connection with kidneys. A pair of long oviduct from ovaries opens into the cloaca. A pair of long oviduct from the ovaries opens into the cloaca. Ovaries release about 2500 to 3000 eggs at this time. The eggs are released in water, so the fertilization is external, development is indirect. A fish-like tailed larva called tadpole is formed. A fish like larva is called as tadpole or they are formed. And rest probably you would know. So that finishes the study of frog. So we have finished cockroach, earthworm and frog. Good. Let's move on.